Imagine a small village in the Netherlands, quiet and grey under the soft light of a spring morning. The year was 1853, and a baby named Vincent Willem van Gogh had just been born in a simple house beside a church. No one could have guessed that this little boy, with fiery red hair and eyes that seemed to hold too much emotion for his age, would one day change the world of art forever. From his earliest days, Vincent wasn't like other children. While other boys chased each other through fields or played games in the dirt, Vincent would wander off alone. He looked at the sky, at the way the light moved through the trees, and he'd stop to study the shapes of clouds. There was something about color, even before he had the words for it, that spoke directly to his soul. His father was a strict pastor, and his mother was gentle but practical. They loved their son, but they didn't understand him. Vincent often felt like a stranger in his own home. When he grew older, he tried to follow in his father's footsteps and work for the church. For a while, he even became a preacher in a poor mining town in Belgium. But he gave away his own clothes to the miners, shared his food with the hungry, and lived in a tiny shack. His superiors didn't approve of his behavior. They thought he was too emotional, too extreme, and he was dismissed. That moment broke something inside Vincent. He had wanted to help people, but now he felt lost again. What could he do with this storm of feelings that lived inside him? He began to draw. At first, his drawings were dark and rough, showing poor farmers, tired faces, and heavy hands that worked the earth. His art was raw, honest, and filled with empathy. It wasn't pretty, but it was real. Vincent's younger brother, Theo, saw something special in him. Theo worked as an art dealer in Paris and believed that Vincent's work had meaning. The brothers wrote hundreds of letters to each other, letters that are still read today. In them, Vincent poured out his heart, describing his thoughts, his fears, and his endless search for beauty and truth. Theo became his greatest supporter, sending him money and love when the rest of the world turned away. After years of struggling in the Netherlands, Vincent moved to Paris to live near Theo. The city was alive with color and creativity. Painters like Monet, Renoir, and Degas were changing art forever. They painted light itself, not just objects. For Vincent, it was like seeing the world in a new language. He began to experiment. His dark tones turned to bright yellows, electric blues, and shimmering greens. The heavy sadness of his earlier work started to glow with new life. But Paris was not kind to Vincent's health. The noise, the crowds, and the chaos overwhelmed him. He drank too much, smoked constantly, and worked obsessively. His hands were always stained with paint, his clothes splattered with color. Sometimes he'd forget to eat for days. He was driven by something he couldn't explain, a need to paint, to capture the way he saw the world before it disappeared. One day, Vincent decided he couldn't take the city anymore. He longed for peace, for sunlight, for something pure. So, he packed his paints and left Paris for the south of France. He arrived in a small town called Arles, where the skies were deep blue and the fields glowed gold with sunflowers. There, he felt alive again. The people of Arles found him strange. They would see him wandering through the fields with his hat full of candles so he could paint at night. But Vincent didn't care. He painted everything he saw, the yellow houses, the olive trees, the stars that swirled above the village. His brush moved like fire across the canvas, fast and full of emotion. In just a few years, he painted more than 2,000 works, landscapes, portraits, and still lifes that would one day become priceless treasures. And yet, during his lifetime, almost no one wanted them. He sold only one painting, and even that was to a friend of Theo's. Most people thought his art was strange, too wild, too emotional. They couldn't see what he saw, the beauty in the ordinary, the light hidden in suffering. Loneliness began to eat away at him. He missed connection, friendship, understanding. So when another painter named Paul Gauguin came to visit him in Arles, Vincent was thrilled. For a short time, the two artists lived and painted together. But their personalities clashed. Vincent was intense and sensitive, while Gauguin was proud and independent. Their friendship exploded in arguments and jealousy. One night, in the middle of a fight, something inside Vincent broke completely. No one knows exactly what happened, but the story goes that Vincent cut off a piece of his own ear and delivered it to a woman at a nearby brothel. The town was horrified. He was taken to a hospital, where he stayed for weeks, trembling and confused. His brother Theo rushed to his side, heartbroken. When Vincent was released, he tried to start again, but his mind had become a battlefield. The people of Arles grew afraid of him. They signed a petition demanding he be removed from the town. Once again, he packed his paints and left, searching for peace that never seemed to last. He moved to an asylum in Saint-Rémy-de-Provence, surrounded by olive trees and quiet hills. There, he was given a small room and permission to paint. Even in his suffering, his art became more powerful than ever. He painted the gardens of the asylum, the cypress trees, and the view from his window at night. One night, as he looked out, the stars above seemed to spin and dance, the sky alive with motion and color. He painted what he saw, and that painting became one of the most famous in history, The Starry Night. Think about that for a moment. A man locked away in an asylum, believed by many to be mad, looked up at the night sky and saw something so beautiful that people all over the world still feel it today. He saw light in darkness. He saw hope in chaos. He saw life in its truest form. Vincent once wrote to Theo, "I am seeking, I am striving, I am in it with all my heart." Those words sum up his life perfectly. He never gave up on trying to express what he felt. Even when he was poor, sick, and alone, he painted every day. His canvases were his voice, his way of saying, "This is how I see the world." Do you see it too? But his struggles didn't end there. His mental illness grew worse, and he worried about being a burden on Theo. The love between the brothers was deep, but Vincent felt guilty for taking so much and giving so little in return. In July of 1890, while staying in a small village north of Paris, he walked into a wheat field with his paints and brushes. Hours later, he was found wounded, having shot himself in the chest. He died 2 days later in Theo's arms, whispering, "The sadness will last forever." He was only 37 years old. After his death, Theo tried to share his brother's work with the world. He believed that one day, people would understand what Vincent had been trying to say. And he was right. Today, Van Gogh's paintings are among the most beloved and valuable in the world. Museums across the globe hold his works, and millions of people stand before them every year, feeling the same heartbeat of color that he once felt. When you look at his sunflowers, you can almost feel the warmth of summer. When you see the bedroom at Arles, you sense his longing for peace. And when you gaze at the starry night, you might understand a little of what it means to find light even in the darkest times. Vincent's life reminds us that greatness often blooms from pain, that beauty can rise from brokenness, and that sometimes those who feel misunderstood by the world are the ones who see it most clearly. The story of Vincent van Gogh did not end in that wheat field. In a way, that was where it began. After his death, the small room where he had painted his final works remained filled with the scent of turpentine and linseed oil. His brushes lay on the table, the tips still stiff with dried yellow paint. The canvases leaned against the wall, images of fields, skies, and faces that no one yet understood. Theo, his loyal brother, walked into that quiet space, tears in his eyes, and gathered up the paintings. He knew, with a kind of holy certainty, that Vincent's art was not madness. It was genius waiting for the world to wake up. Theo carried those canvases to Paris. He tried to show them to galleries, but most owners shook their heads. They said the colors were too violent, the brushstrokes too wild. One man told him, "These are not paintings, they are explosions." Theo didn't argue. He simply said, "Yes. That's exactly what they are." But he was tired, heartbroken, and sick himself. Just 6 months after Vincent's death, Theo died too, at the age of 33. The two brothers who had shared their lives through letters were now buried not far from each other. Their graves, side by side, are still there today in a small French cemetery, two souls who never stopped believing in each other. Years passed. The art world changed slowly. Painters began to question old rules. They wanted to express feelings instead of perfect reality. One day, someone pulled out one of Vincent's paintings and looked at it again. This time, they didn't see chaos. They saw emotion. They saw truth. They saw the world the way only a heart in pain could see it, raw, beautiful, trembling with life. Then came an exhibition. A few of Van Gogh's paintings were displayed in a small gallery in Paris. People stopped in their tracks. They stood before the swirling skies and the golden fields, silent, moved in ways they couldn't explain. One critic wrote that Van Gogh painted not with paint, but with his soul. That one sentence began to change everything. Soon, more of his works appeared in museums. Artists like Picasso, Matisse, and Kandinsky spoke his name with admiration. They said his courage to paint emotion had given them permission to do the same. His art became the seed from which modern painting grew. The man who had once been mocked as insane was now called a visionary. Imagine that! A man who died poor and lonely, unable to sell a single painting, had changed the future of art forever. It's almost poetic, how the world had to catch up to him, how his time came only after his death. But what is it about Van Gogh's work that moves people so deeply? It's not just the color. It's not just the technique. It's something more human. When you look at his paintings, you feel what he felt, the tenderness, the longing, the constant ache to find beauty in a world that could be so cruel. In the Potato Eaters, you see the rough hands of farmers eating their simple meal, their faces shadowed by a single lamp. It's not glamorous, but it's honest. In Sunflowers, you see the bright yellow life that seems to glow from within the canvas. In Starry Night, you feel the world spinning with emotion, as if the universe itself is alive. Each stroke of his brush was like a heartbeat, strong, desperate, alive. There's a story that when Vincent was alive, children in Arles used to follow him and laugh, calling him the red-headed madman. He would smile sadly and walk on. Those same streets today are lined with plaques and signs marking the places where he painted. People travel from all over the world to stand where he once stood, to see what he saw, and maybe to feel what he felt. Isn't it strange how time can turn ridicule into reverence? Even his letters have become treasures. Over 600 of them were found, long, passionate letters between Vincent and Theo. In them, he talked about art, faith, love, loneliness, and the meaning of life. Sometimes he wrote about the stars, saying they made him dream. Other times he wrote about his sadness, his sense of failure, and his endless hope that someday people would understand his work. Those letters reveal a man of deep thought and tenderness, not the madman history first painted him as. In one letter, he wrote, what am I in the eyes of most people? An nonentity or an oddity? But even if that were absolutely true, then one day I shall show what is in my heart. And he did, through paint, through passion, through pain. If you've ever felt misunderstood, if you've ever chased a dream that no one else believed in, then you already understand Vincent van Gogh. He speaks directly to that part of the human heart that refuses to give up, even when everything seems hopeless. His art is a conversation across time. When you stand before the starry night, it feels like he's whispering, "Look at the world the way I saw it, alive, wild, full of movement." And when you look closely at his self-portraits, you see a man searching, always searching, for peace, for meaning, for a place in the world. You can almost feel his eyes asking, "Do you see me now?" There's a bittersweet beauty in knowing that the world finally did. Decades after his death, his paintings sold for millions. Portrait of Dr. Gachet, the painting of the doctor who cared for him in his final months, became one of the most expensive paintings ever sold. Museums in Amsterdam, Paris, and New York built entire wings to house his works. His name became a symbol, not just of art, but of perseverance, of human emotion, of the idea that even in suffering, there is beauty worth sharing. And yet, for all his fame now, one wonders what Vincent would think if he could see it. Would he be happy that the world finally understood him? Or would he simply smile and return to his easel, still searching for the perfect color of the sky? Perhaps both. Because what drove him was never money or fame, it was love. Love for the world, love for light, love for life itself. There's something profoundly comforting about that even in moments of despair, when he was surrounded by shadows, he kept looking for light. He found it in flowers, in fields, in the night sky. He painted what he could not say with words. Maybe that's why so many people, even today, feel healed when they look at his art. It's as if he's saying, "You are not alone in your pain. There is still beauty all around you." And that message, more than a century later, is what makes him timeless. Sometimes, teachers in art schools ask students to imagine what they would say to Van Gogh if they could meet him. Some say they'd thank him for his courage. Others say they'd tell him how his work changed their lives. But maybe the best thing to say would be something simple: "We see you now, Vincent. We see what you saw." Because that's all he ever wanted, to be seen, to be understood. His story is also a lesson in the strange way life works. Greatness often blooms where no one is looking. Success doesn't always happen while we're alive to witness it. Sometimes our purpose is to plant seeds that others will harvest long after we're gone. Van Gogh planted those seeds with every brushstroke. The world just needed time to grow into his vision. Today, when people walk through the Van Gogh Museum in Amsterdam, they move slowly, quietly, almost reverently. Children point at the swirls of blue and yellow. Couples hold hands, whispering about how alive the colors seem. And somewhere, between those walls, it feels like Vincent himself is still there, watching, smiling, finally at peace. There's one more thing he once said, something that reveals his heart more clearly than any painting. He wrote, "I feel that there is nothing more truly artistic than to love people." That line, simple, human, pure, might be the most important of all. Because in the end, his art wasn't about fame or glory. It was about love. His love for humanity, for beauty, for the fleeting, fragile world around him. So, the next time you see the starry night, don't just look at it. Feel it. Feel the movement of the stars, the pulse of the sky, the quiet houses below. Remember that it was painted by a man who fought his demons every day but never stopped searching for beauty. And let it remind you of this truth, even in the darkest moments. the stars are still shining. The story of Vincent van Gogh is not just a story about art. It's a story about what it means to be human, to struggle, to dream, to love, to fall, and to rise again through what we create. His life may have ended too soon, but his spirit continues to live every time someone stands in front of one of his paintings and feels something stir inside them. That is immortality. Not in the way of kings or conquerors, but in the way of artists, quietly, eternally, through beauty that touches the heart. So, perhaps Vincent was never really gone. Perhaps, every time someone looks at the stars and feels hope, a part of him is still alive, painting the night sky with light.